reason. I won't get into all that. Trying to make the story sharper among the top characters. And what I find is the reasons that the characters are doing some of the things they do happen to have to do with things that happened back on Earth before they were brought here. So what I find myself doing is kind of weaving this together with very short little flashbacks of something that happened, maybe a little bit iconoclastic, but something that you can show in a scene in 5 seconds and not have very much, not even need dialogue in a lot of cases. So there are some concepts that I'm probably not going to explain verbally. I'm just going to have a line or two, script. And but there'll be a whole concept behind it that has to do with that character. I don't know how that works, but I'm not going to have a lot of verbiage explaining some of the more esoteric ideas. One of the ideas, though, is to show, because there's a spaceship, and eventually it's going to go someplace. It might be a sequel or something. It's eventually going to go to another world, but the Earth is falling apart, which is another part of the story, and or maybe it is right now. But the way I'm going to show where they're going is that there's a board game, and then there's a video game based on the board game that's played, and then the contents of that game more or less parallel what's supposed to happen to the people in the future. And there is a board game in existence called Star Reporter back in the 1950s, which I don't know if anybody even knows what that is anymore. I'm using that. That is kind of the metaphor for what's going to happen to them in the future. And if you can show that in 5 seconds, you can show a board game in 5 seconds.
Sure.
You can show a video game. Of course, now you have to license that game from Parker Brothers probably. And you probably have to find somebody to write the computer game or something, a gamer to actually. You can invent a whole world around what's going to happen in the future. You could make a game out of it, but that's a whole other project. I'm not going to do that now. But that's the idea, to have a metaphor that represents a much bigger concept. Like the metaphor. What do you think? That sounds like A24 maybe, but that's a way to put a lot of other concepts into a story without having necessarily have a lot of exposition or take up a lot of space. This is a 2-hour film. It's not a 20-part miniseries. This could easily be a series.
Right.
You wanted to go into a lot of detail about every character. Manifest. One of my favorite series right now is Manifest. You've ever seen that?
I haven't.
Back in the past. But it could have been conceived of that way. But this is instead just a 2-hour film.
Can you refresh my memory?